Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video with Swaggle. Boy, oh boy, do we have some spicy stuff going on in the comic book internet world right now. Glen from the Comic Palace striking a nerve with a lot of comic artists, writers, creators, readers, etc. A viral clip going around the interwebs with his stance of writers needing to not write themselves into the book and go back to telling good stories. Now, very, very interesting what Glen had to say. You know, a lot of great points that he brought up. This has obviously taken a life of its own in terms of the virality of it. So many people, YouTube channels, Twitter spaces, all this stuff talking about this. Of course, it's become a very, very politically charged thing. And I thought it would be interesting to talk about it in this video here today. As somebody who, you know, is a YouTuber in the comic world, who has written now a comic book and has spent the last 15 years of my career writing and directing in entertainment, you know, working on big characters and IP and things like that. I feel like I might be, you know, uniquely positioned to at least share some of my, you know, points of view on what Glen was talking about and maybe give you guys some added insight or context. And I figured that this might be, you know, an interesting video to have here on the channel. Of course, I'm going to play the clip for you guys in case you don't have the context here. We're going to watch it together and then I'll share with you guys my perspective. But of course, before I get into it, if you guys could like, comment, subscribe, I appreciate it. Helps support the channel, doing those things. But let's get into this video here today. Now, of course, this is the viral clip right here. It was posted to Twitter by this account, Def Not Ty. And again, this is a clip that was taken from the Comic Book Palace YouTube channel from this particular video right here, the Comic Book Palace Reborn episode 42. Now, for added context, the Comic Book Palace is a YouTube channel. Glen right here has a retail store, and usually he puts out content, you know, talking about you know, new comic books, and then also kind of does what is, you know, effectively like a reality show, you know, life in the comic book shop. And this particular clip was taken from one of those episodes and posted onto X. And basically it went viral with a lot of people having a lot to say about it. Of course, I'll put links to the YouTube channel and the clip and everything like that in the description if you guys want to check it out. But let's watch this clip together and then we can kind of, you know, talk around what he actually had to say.
Most of these new writers don't have the love of comics like these older writers had. And all they care about is, how can I put myself in the book? No, we don't care what you would do if you were Iron Man. We don't care who you are. You're writing Tony Stark. You're not writing yourself in a book. If that's the case, write your own comic with you in it. No one will read it because nobody cares. People grew up, are growing up loving Peter Parker, loving Miles Morales, loving all these Captain America. We don't need you to put your input in it. Just write Steve Rogers. Don't write Steve Rogers. What would Steve Rogers be if I was Steve Rogers? That's not how it works. But that's again how most of these new people write nowadays. That's why most of the stuff is shit. Because we don't care what you would do, because we don't care about your life whatsoever. Just write a book, get paid for what you do, get paid for what you're supposed to be doing, and make it a good story.
He's not wrong. He is definitely not wrong. A lot of interesting things that he, of course, had to say. Obviously, this resonated with a lot of, I would say, comic book fans, comic book readers, but even in other places culturally, which again is what we're going to kind of, you know, talk about a little bit later on. Now, there was, of course, like I said, a lot of drama around this, a lot of comic creators, you know, comparing him to, you know, the comic book guy and The Simpsons and things like that. Again, we're not really going to talk about that, but what we do need to discuss is like how politically charged this thing actually got from, you know, this particular video, because again, we live in this world, right, where everything is political, right? So everybody has taken this clip and now it has become the thing to validate, you know, their own sort of, you know, worldview, or to, you know, be, you know, something to uphold their thesis on whatever is going on in the cultural space. But, you know, I want to talk about, you know, what Glen actually said and see again if I can add some context to it. So, you know, again, this might get a little political here in the video, but, you know, I think that you guys know, you know, if you've been watching my channel for years now, I think that I've built up enough cachet to be able to speak about this, in a respectful way. I think you guys know that I'm going to come at this from a place of good faith. And I'm not really afraid to share my opinions or pull my punches in this video. So let's start here. Writers writing themselves into their own books. Now, this is one that I do understand what Glen is implying here. I think I understand what he's implying here. There's actually two sides to this. Right here is where I think, Glen is what he's kind of inferring. And this is what I'm going to talk about, but we're going to table this here because there's this other side of it, which again, I think is a little bit of a technicality, but I have to sort of address it because, we have to come at this from all sides. Writers writing themselves in their own book. Of course, writers write themselves into their own book, right? Like it is natural to do that. This is the arts. Whether you are a writer, a director, a musician, a YouTuber, whoever you are, if you are a creative in the creative space or in the arts, you are always going to be putting yourself into your own work. It's just natural. We're human. We all are going to have our own tone, sensibility, style, way that we do stuff. And a lot of ourself is going to be put into the work that we create. And really, there's no way around that. But I think that technicality we can all sort of understand and we can all kind of put that to the side because I don't actually think that is what Glen specifically was getting at. If I'm going to, make the assumption of what he is implying, I think it has more to do with this idea that it feels like we live in a world in our media where a lot of these characters, historic characters that we know, are not being written as the characters that essentially define them. And they're not being written with the qualities and the themes of those characters that make them who they are. So let's use an example here. Glen mentioned Captain America, and let's talk about Captain America. Captain America, at his core, is a character who wants to uphold the values and beliefs that America was founded upon. The ideals of what America should represent. That is who Steve Rogers and Captain America seeks to uphold. That is who he is at his core, right? And there are times, in his life where the governments and, America is not always living up to those ideals. And he comes into conflict with those things. But at his core, he is always looking to uphold those things, right? Superman is a beacon of hope, right? So he is always going to be somebody who is the flag bearer for this idea of hope. Spider-Man, great power comes great responsibility. These are the fundamental core beliefs of these characters. And no matter what story they're put in, no matter what alien monster they're fighting, or global espionage mystery they have to solve, or dimension they're in, and whether they're fighting Mephisto or Thanos or some street burglar, these core tenets are how these characters see the world and how they operate. And these core tenets should always be a part of the way in which they are written. Now, Steve Rogers, again, believes in the ideals in which America was founded upon. If you're a writer, and you have a worldview that America was not found on ideals that are ones that should be respected or ones that should be upheld, you can still write Captain America if you can separate out what you think personally, and you can write Captain America as someone who still wants to uphold those ideas. But if you're somebody who doesn't want to uphold those ideas and you want to write Captain America and you actually now want to write Captain America as somebody who no longer upholds those ideals, well, now you're not writing Captain America. Now he is no longer Steve Rogers. This is the nuance in which I think Glen was talking about, where it's not that, you are writing yourself into the book because you have a certain sensibility and certain style and even maybe a little bit of a worldview, but you still fundamentally are writing Captain America. You are now writing Captain America as a different character. And I think that this is the critique that Glen was pointing out and the thing that people feel, connect with. There are so many characters who are so well defined in our pop culture that, we have come to understand like that is core to those characters, that we want to see those things constantly reflected if this is going to be an IP that continues on for, a long, long time. And I think that it is fair to say that a lot of these characters aren't always being upheld to the attributes in which they should have. Now, I want to talk about why I think that that is the case. But before I totally get there, let's talk about the other part of what Glen was talking about, where at the end he said, just go back to writing good stories. And here is where I get a little more black-pilled on this situation, this idea of just writing good stories, because frankly, I don't think we can anymore. I don't think we live in a world where just doing the bit and writing a good story is enough. And that's a sad truth, because here's why I know that that's the case. There are good stories out there that are being written right now. Ghost Rider is really good. Ghost Rider is just being Ghost Rider. Moon Knight is pretty good. Moon Knight is being Moon Knight, and I think Hulk, from what I gather, also is currently pretty good right now doing Hulk things. But nobody is talking about them, right? Nobody is talking about them. If I put out a video on my YouTube today talking about, how Ghost Rider is good, who's going to watch it? Nobody. Nobody's going to write that. Nobody's going to watch that. If I put out a video talking about, Nightcrawler having two moms, oh man, that's going to be juicy, man. People are going to want to see that. Everyone's going to want to watch that. We live in a world where, there is a heavy negativity bias. And we also ultimately now live in a world based on tech and algorithms and social media and all this stuff. Only thing that is actual currency is attention, right? We live in the attention economy. I know you guys know what I'm talking about with attention economy stuff. Movies, comics, music, YouTube, everyone is vying for your attention, in this space. And companies right now are incentivized to cut through all of this noise. And what is hard to cut through noise is just good story. Because what a good story is? A good story is like getting someone to read it, getting someone to follow along for 6 issues, and then actually getting somebody to, get someone to tell their 2 friends to actually read this comic book because it's actually really good. What is a lot easier than selling a good story in this attention economy where there's so much noise and all this media coming at you? A banger variant cover with a foil on it, right? Like a new #1 issue with a new team. Spider-Man is now in a 3-way relationship. Nightcrawler has 2 moms. Captain America is dead. Oh my God, they killed him. Ms. Marvel is dead. This is the world we live in, right? Most low bar version of capturing someone's attention, trying to get a quick sale, trying to get a quick buck. Because at this point, specifically with, the comic book spaces, the big 2 and stuff, they're just trying to appeal to the whales at this point. With the direct floppy comic book market, their business model is no longer, telling good stories. It's just not the easiest way for them to make money anymore. The easiest way for them to make money is to just kind of churn it all out, get some variant covers on it, put a foil on it, and just ultimately try to capitalize on the short-term profits, just hit their mark. They're just trying to keep the treadmill going, a lot of these companies. And I realize that, a lot of the conversation or, you guys are going to have thoughts in the comments where it's just going to be like, well, they're destroying the brands. Like this is going to kill them long term. But you also have to remember the people working in these buildings, they don't care about the long term. They're not going to be at this job for longer than like 2 years, right? Like they only care about selling a book today. That's the only thing that matters. They're not tired. They don't give about, what the company's going to do 10 years from now. So this is the thing, like investing in a good story, trying to tell a good story, trying to, hire a really, really esteemed writer to tell the best story ever. It's just, in the tech way of doing things, the least amount of effort for the highest amount of return on your reward. A good story is very, very low on the list. It just is what it is. And so frankly, that's just not where they're going to be investing their money and their efforts at this time. They're going to be doing it based on, what is the clickable headline or, what is the variant cover, and that's really how a lot of these companies operate. So that's that. Now let's talk a little bit about this idea of, again, writers writing themselves into their own books and, where does that come from and why has it become so political with, having these sort of like personalized worldviews going into these books. A lot of people always talk about how like, well, comic books have always been political, but like now it's like very, very overtly political. It's a different way. And again, I think that has to do with like the fact that, again, attention economy, craft is no longer important. Being able to have like this great allegory for whatever, political thing that you had is just, it's not worth the effort, to do that. Glenn was saying like writers of old actually cared and all this sort of stuff. And it's like, well, writers of old, they worked in an industry where they could just be a comic book writer. Most comic book writers today are very, very transient in what they do. Like they write for this, and then they write like an animation thing over here, and then they write for a video game over there, and they're just looking to get to the next thing, right? Like, or they want to like get to the Netflix TV show, right? Again, so much media is out there that, there's very, very few people that can actually be a full-time comic book writer. There's only one Jason Aaron that can be Jason Aaron. That's really it. I mean, there's like a handful of people. So there's more people that want to do it than the industry can support. And that's why you have a lot of people that have to do a bunch of other stuff. So let me table that and go back to the original point that I was trying to make. Now, again, why has it become so political? Let me do it like this. Let me talk about it like this. Let me speak from the film side of things. Now, earlier in my career, right, there was a time when I directed tons of music videos. And there was a time in my career where I was white hot in my career, and getting a lot of attention, doing a lot of meetings, had very, very, very high profile agents and managers and stuff like that. And there was something very, very interesting at that time in which I was doing a lot of pitches and movie stuff and taking a lot of these meetings. I actually, in the very, very short window, noticed a lot of change happening as far as like some of the conversations that were going on. When I first started, it was like, okay, let's take a movie script. Here's the director, here's the, the writer, here's the idea, what do we think about it? Let's read it. Okay. Hey, I like that this is good. Okay. A+B=C. Cool. Like, I like this idea. I like this team. I like this movie. And it was very, very kind of streamlined in that sense. But after a little bit of a while and doing some of these meetings and seeing kind of the landscape change, what I started to hear a lot in meetings was this one phrase that I found very, very interesting. What you started to hear a lot is this idea of, why does this movie need to be made now? Why does somebody want to watch this now? And implicit in this idea of why does this thing need to be made now was essentially, them sort of asking, why is this movie going to be culturally relevant? Why is this thing going to cut through the noise? We live in the attention economy. How is this thing going to break through? And it became really an interesting phrase that you would hear again and again and again. And that essentially incentivized creators, writers, directors, and even into other aspects of the industry, in other creative fields, video games, and, I assume in comic books and things like that as well. It became incentivized for you to sort of pitch ideas or frame your ideas as things that would be culturally relevant. And again, this is why things have become so political. Now, a lot of you are thinking wokeness and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, I would actually grant you that this is why that has been an element, at least from a individual creator level. They realize that in order for my movie to get greenlit, I need to make, something that is culturally relevant. And it does probably tend to be the case that people who work in the creative fields, politically are on the left side of things. And so maybe they believe in the wokeness side of things. So they are, all about diversity and these things. And these are why these things have become a talking point. And this is why people believe those things. And this is why so much of it exists, because those are the things that are being greenlit by the executives and stuff. Because it's so, again, hard to read your script and just know in my creative mind that when I read your script, I'm like, this is just an excellent movie because it's good. This is just a good story. That is so hard to do. That is so hard to say, I'm going to put my job on the line for this because it's a good story, versus, hey, this right here, trans stuff is hot right now. This is a trans allegory, story. Therefore, like, we should do this movie, right? Whatever is culturally relevant is going to be the thing that now people do, because again, attention economy. So now bringing that all the way back to what Glen was saying, where writers need to stop writing themselves into their stories. And again, I would actually expand this to, editors, creative people, creative directors, all of the teams of creative people that, play a role in bringing these things to life. this is why we have writers writing themselves in their stories, which essentially what I am gathering by that is him, kind of infusing like writers kind of putting their own sort of political, cultural, climate stuff into the characters, into these stories. The reason people are doing that is because everybody is incentivized to do that, because those are the things that are being greenlit. Because again, everyone is fighting for the attention here on social media, trying to get their thing to be read versus their thing to be watched versus my YouTube video to be clicked on. And that is the incentive structure to which we live. And that's why ultimately, I don't know how we get out of this, other than the fact that people who write good stories are just doing it on their own, right? This is why you have so many people going to the crowdfunded space. This is why all the best writing is in the indie book scene, because they can just focus on doing their own thing. And if you are somebody who crowdfunds a comic book and you've been able to create attention for yourself because you have a YouTube channel, because you have an Instagram, because whatever it is, you're on social media, you're an influencer, then you have the eyeballs to be able to just write a good story. Like we've talked about, had Eric July here on the channel. We talked about the Rippaverse. The only reason he can tell this sort of, and I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, like a fastball down the middle, meat and potatoes superhero story, is because he has the audience and the attention and the YouTube to be able to get his story out there. If he pitched his story as like, oh, here's my pitch for the Superman, like he's going to take the same plot and apply it to Superman, like there's no way that they would greenlight that, because they'd be like, well, this is just like a regular superhero story. Like we have to do something different, like this has been done before. We gotta break through. We gotta break through the noise. So this is something that I think is really, really interesting. And again, this idea of trying to break through this noise has hurt, this ability for a lot of people to just tell the good story or do the bit, which is another way to put it. Anyways, I've been rambling on for a long time. I just thought I would add some context. Obviously, I feel a way about this. I could go on about this topic for, hours. I have so much to say, and I don't actually know if anyone is watching the video at this point, but it is a very, very interesting topic, and I have so many more thoughts about it. And I realize it's a little bit different than our regularly scheduled programming. But let me know in the comments if you guys think that this stuff is interesting, and I can, have more conversations about this. Maybe talk a little bit more about, the movie side of things, MCU, and where I see it. Again, I actually do think what Glen said, has a lot of validity to it. I do agree with him that, as a writer, your responsibility is to, carry the baton and pass it on. You are inheriting this beloved character, and the character is not really for you. You have to put your auteurship, you have to put your, creative, pride aside, and you have to be able to sort of just do the job. In fact, when you actually get an opportunity to inherit some of these characters, I mean, you should be scared. You should be nervous to be like, hey, I have a huge responsibility to uphold this character, to make sure that people, when they read it, find that this is the character that they grew up loving, or you have to, get this character for the next generation, and you have to understand there's a reason that these characters have had such a long, successful run, and been, as relevant in pop culture for as long as they have been, because they were built off of these themes and fundamentals that make them core, that people have connected with over the last, 60 years, decades now. So you have that responsibility. And I do think that writers need to try to do that. But I think it's incumbent on all of the entertainment world, all of the people in the creative spaces, executives, editors, things like that, to figure out a way of how they can go back to good storytelling and how they can figure out how to market, without leaning on the easiest versions of those marketing tropes, like political headlines or, gimmick variant covers, to cut through this noise. And I realize that's a very, very difficult ask, and they probably don't have the budgets to hire the best creative teams to work on this stuff. But, for the long-term sustainability, I think that this is very, very important. I don't think that a comic book industry can survive without the big two, Marvel and DC. I do think that those companies and those characters need to be successful. Otherwise, it's going to be pretty grim for comic books for the future. Although I realize, again, like I said, nobody cares about the future. Everybody's caring about what are they going to sell tomorrow. And what they're going to sell tomorrow is a banger Spider-Boy variant cover, man. Just get Spider-Boy, put some sneakers on him, put him in a hip-hop, people like graffiti, and, just put a foil on it. And that's what we're going to get for a long time until we can go back to good storytelling. But hey, maybe we're going to do that because when times are tough, you got to go back to basics. Anyways, I've been going on for a long time now. Again, like I already said, probably nobody is watching anymore. I am definitely rambling, but very, very interesting thing, with what Glen put out. Again, I'll put links in the description. But let me know what you guys think in the comments about what he said. Let me know what you guys, if you found that what he said connected with you, and again, I wasn't here to make this video to talk about all the drama stuff going on. And I just wanted to add a little bit of extra context from somebody who can maybe speak from it from an entertainment career perspective. And I think that there's a lot of stuff that this is tied to politically, in the entertainment space, not just in comic books, but also people relating this to MCU and Marvel and things like that. And so I do think that it is a worthwhile thing to have this conversation with you guys here today. Anyways, that's all right for this video. Let me know what you guys think. Like, comment, subscribe. See you on the next one.